Berserker is the king of close combat, keeping your squad mates alive and having high survivability by themselves, as well as always having utility of never running out of ammo. So, let's take a look at all the Berserker weapons. One important thing to note before we get into the Berserker's weapons is that all melee weapons are affected differently depending on the angle at which you swing them. If you swing them in a vertical striking position, then they will do the maximum amount of damage that they can. Any sort of horizontal or diagonal slashes will result in less damage. The Berserker starting equipment consists of the Crovel, the 9mm pistol, the lawnmower blade, and the EMP grenades. Looking at the Crovel, it weighs 4 pounds and costs $200. Its light attack can do up to 49 damage per hit, making it have 105 damage per second. Its heavy attack does 86 damage per hit and has 86 damage per second on its heavy hits, and its bash does 15 damage. Parrying with the Crovel will give you 50% damage reduction, and blocking with the Crovel will give you 40% damage reduction. Light attacks with the Crovel count as slashing damage, and heavy attacks as well as bashing attacks count as bludgeoning damage. Overall, the Crovel is a pretty solid weapon and can be used early on and throughout many of the early stages if you don't wish to buy anything else. And then finally we have the EMP grenades, which weigh 0 pounds and cost $40 each. The EMP does 25 damage on initial hit, as well as it slows any Zeds that are hit and disables any rage or special attacks such as the Siren Scream. The EMP grenades can be extremely helpful in most situations, especially for teams that are having trouble with larger enemies like Skrakes and Flesh Pounds. The first weapon that you can purchase with the Berserker is the Katana, weighing 3 pounds and costing $600. The Katana's light attacks do up to 68 damage and having 163 damage per second. Its heavy attack does 90 damage as well as 95 damage per second, and its stabbing move does 68 damage up to 85 damage per second. It has 50% parry damage reduction and 40% blocking damage reduction. All attacks count as slashing, except of course the stabbing. The Katana also has a unique ability. When you switch into it, you can perform a draw cut. The way to do this is to hold in the attack button while you're switching to the Katana, and it will immediately do a 180 slash in front of you, dealing damage to everything, and this also counts as a heavy attack. The second weapon that you can purchase with the Berserker is the nail gun. The nail gun weighs 6 pounds and costs $600. Each nail does 30 damage, and in single fire mode, it can do 75 damage per second. When switching to its shotgun mode, it can do 210 damage up to 525 damage per second. It has 50 bash damage, and the nail gun is the only Berserker weapon that does not give you movement boost when using Skirmisher, as it does not count as a melee weapon. The third weapon you can buy as the Berserker is the Zweihander. The Zweihander weighs 6 pounds and costs $1,000. It does 85 damage with light attacks up to 112 damage per second. It does 195 heavy damage up to 169 damage per second, and it does 63 bash damage up to 65 damage per second. It has 60% parry resistance and 40% blocking resistance. All attacks count as stab or slash. Up next is the Pulverizer. The Pulverizer weighs 6 pounds and costs $1,200. With light attacks, it can do up to 70 damage, up to 112 damage per second. With heavy attacks with the Pulverizer loaded, it does 383 base damage on hit, up to 351 damage per second. Without any ammo in it, its heavy attacks do 145 damage per hit, up to 133 damage per second. Its bash damage is 68 damage per hit, up to 95 damage per second. It has 60% parry resistance and 50% blocking resistance. All attacks count as bludgeoning damage, except for the loaded shots, which count as explosive damage. Up next we have the Bone Breaker. The Bone Breaker weighs 9 pounds and costs $1,500. It has a base 85 damage with light attacks up to 170 damage per second. With its heavy attacks, it hits for 165 damage per hit, up to 151 damage per second. And it has the highest bash damage of any weapon in the game, having 175 damage on bash hit and 146 damage per second with bashes. It has 60% parry resistance and 70% blocking resistance, and all attacks including the bash all count as bludgeoning damage. And then the final weapon in the Berserker's arsenal is the Eviscerator, weighing 10 pounds and costing $1,600. When firing the saw blades off, the Eviscerator does 480 damage per saw blade hit and having the same damage per second. The saw blades can bounce up to 5 times and are affected by gravity, meaning that they could hit the same enemy multiple times. With its secondary fire of the chainsaw, it does 29 damage per tick, up to 242 damage per second. Its bash damage is 90 up to 84 damage per second. It has 70% parry resistance and 60% block resistance, and all attacks count as slashing attacks. The Berserker gets perk damage 1% per level up to 25% at max. The Berserker gets all damage reduction 3% per every 5 levels up to 15% max. The Berserker also has a night vision capability, and the Berserker has the passive of not being able to get grabbed by clots. So, moving on to builds. I've seen a few different types of builds for the Berserker, but here seems to be the main 3 that people seem to show up with. The first class seems to be the most popular, and what I'm just calling the Berserker. At level 5 you take Skirmisher to get the bonus movement speed as well as the bonus health regen. At 10 you take Butcher for the bonus damage and attack speed. At 15, either perk seems to work, either resistance or parry. Resistance is more useful if you're not used to parrying, but parrying is better if you can parry attacks effectively. At 20, Smash seems to be the more popular option, giving you much more damage with heavy attacks, and this also counts towards the Saw Blade of the Eviscerator. And then at 25, Spartan seems to be the more popular pick, where you can move around in real time. During Z time, the second build also seems to be quite popular, which is the tank build. Starting out at level 5, you go with Dreadnought to get the bonus health, Butcher for the bonus damage and resistance or parry, again depending on your skill level, and Berserker Rage to make sure that you have even more sustain than you already do have. The tank build seems to be exceedingly popular if there are multiple medics on the team or multiple people functioning as medics, as you will have an even easier time staying alive. The final build seems to be the oddball one that pops up every once in a while, but it's the ranged Berserker. At level 5 going Dreadnought for the bonus health, at 10 going Vampire so that you can keep up your bonus health, at 15 again resistance or parry depending on skill level, at 20 Smash or Massacre depending on your particular playstyle, and then at 25 Berserker Rage to keep you more healed up, or Spartan to get you out of situations easier. So let's move on to loadouts. The first loadout is the Eviscerator, Katana, and then either Medic Pistol or Desert Eagle. Generally Medic Pistol is more useful for the team, but Desert Eagle will give you more damage, as well as giving you a second ranged option that has high damage. The second loadout is going with the Bone Crusher and the Nail Gun. The Bone Crusher allows you to have frontline presence as well as a lot of defense, and the Nail Gun allows you to move back and attack from a distance. The third option is going Zweihander, Pulverizer, and then your choice of either the 500 pistol, C4, or a Medic Pistol. With this build you tend to use the Zweihander for everything except Flesh Pounds, which is where you use the Pulverizer, and then you use whatever your backup weapon, whether that be the 500, C4, Medic Pistol, etc. Medic Pistol to keep your team healed up, C4 to give you more burst damage, and 500 just for sustained damage. The fourth setup is going with the Eviscerator, the double barrel shotgun, and the Medic Pistol. This build allows you to deal with pretty much anything at any distance, and providing some utility for the team. And then the final loadout mostly goes to the ranged Berserker, where I've seen them pick the nail gun most often, and then honestly anything else after that. I've seen some go with the RPG, with the grenade launcher, with the Seeker 6. It really depends more on playstyle and personal preference, rather than a set loadout. My favorite loadout for the Berserker is the Eviscerator, Katana, and then either Medic Pistol or Desert Eagle. This allows you to have good damage to practically everything. You can use the Eviscerator to deal with most things, including larger enemies like Skrakes and Flesh Pounds easily, while using the Katana if all else fails, and then having the Medic Pistol around just to heal your team, or having the Desert Eagle around just to have that little bit more sustained damage if you're playing solo. So overall, the Berserker is great against small and large enemies, but kind of has problems with the medium Zeds. Bloats can be a problem for you in the early levels if you don't have the nail gun, and later on the Husks can be very dangerous to you. Overall, the Berserker is a very strong class that can be helpful for the whole team. I wouldn't recommend having more than 2 Berserkers in any game, and most of the time 2 is even kind of pushing it. So I hope this guide helped you out, and I hope you guys come see me in the next video where we will be talking about the Commando. Until then, stay cool, and bye!